now on air.
Hi, people. It's Ed with Free Circle. Hope you're having a good evening. I am looking for my headphones. I apologize for not proper prior planning here. However, I have been listening this evening to the world, and there we go. We don't want you guys to get echo or anything, so we want to plug in some headphones. So, what's going on in the world? That's the topic here. The big thing is Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh, they released the FBI report, and we're going to listen to this interview or this press conference. There's a lot of grit going around. It's rubbing people the wrong way. I feel, I don't know, it's like Rodney King. We're having a Rodney King moment in America. Can't we all just get along? However, there's divides that go deep, and this particular Kavanaugh issue, it's a deep divide in America, and it's one that we really need to address. These allegations, if they are false, we need something done about this. And for now, that's all I'm going to say about that, because I get pretty touchy on matters of this subject, and I just want to leave it at that for now. Anyway, we're going to listen to the Senate Republican leaders and their explosive press conference. So let's listen to this conference. It's about 25 minutes long, and I will be present in the room if you want to chat. But let's take a listen to this.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. What we know for sure is the FBI report did not corroborate any of the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh.
Nothing wrong.
The second thing we know for sure is that there's no way anything we did would satisfy the Democrats. They've always got a reason why the goalposts need to be moved farther down the field, and nothing we could do would satisfy them. They're dug in. You've seen it from the beginning. And with that, I want to turn it over to Chairman Grassley and the members of the committee, who I think have done a really outstanding job.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Before I say a few words, so I won't have to announce each person after me, is going in this order will be Hatch, Corn, and Lee, and tell us. So please just come to the podium and say whatever you want to say, and then we'll take questions. This is the 87th day. That's 3 weeks longer than the average of the last 3 or 4 nominees to the Supreme Court.
87 days.
So don't tell me we haven't spent enough time. Also, I feel very good about where this nomination is right now. Now, I don't say that from the standpoint of counting votes. I say that from the standpoint of the qualifications of this candidate and the fact that those qualifications to be a Supreme Court justice based upon his 12 years on the D.C. Circuit without anybody finding any fault with his qualifications to serve there. But that hasn't been talked about much.
That hasn't been talked about much. All those years on the D.C. Circuit Court, and not one pipe up from anybody until it just so happens to be midterm, and this is fiery, so people like to get worked up. Why was this never brought up before? And now all of a sudden, all of this exposure to it. That's very important.
Else. This person is very well qualified. A person that believes in the principles of due process, the presumption of innocence, and readiness to serve are recognized. So Judge Kavanaugh should be confirmed on Saturday.
Another thing, was this a criminal proceeding or was this a confirmation hearing? So that's something else we should be talking about.
Now, this started downhill very quickly on about July the 10th, when Schumer said that we're going to do everything we can to stop this nomination. And you can look back 87 days and you can see that everything but whether he's qualified to serve has been brought up. I've tried to commit, and I think I've carried out what I promised immediately, that we were going to have a fair and thorough process. We have had a fair and thorough process, and I think that's best demonstrated by the fact that the minute I read about who the person was in the Feinstein letter, Dr. Ford, I read about her name in the paper. We got on it right away to provide the forum she wanted. And in turn, we provide the same forum for Kavanaugh. But what I've been dealing with since July the 10th, the downhill slope that Schumer's put us on, is really dealing with the demolition derby. And they just about destroyed a good person to be on the Supreme Court. So, hopefully we're 48 hours away from having a new person on the Supreme Court.
48 hours.
I certainly endorse everything that the chairman of the committee has said. Look, I'm disappointed in my Democratic colleagues for what they're doing. There's no excuse for it, but they're doing it. I'm grateful to the FBI for their efforts in doing a thorough, very important investigation. Many of us have said that if Judge Kavanaugh did what he's been accused of doing by some of the Democrats, outside people, he should be disqualified. But after investigations from both the committee and the FBI, we have found nothing, absolutely nothing to corroborate accusations against him. And we need to confirm him right away. His confirmation will be a victory for the Senate as an institution, a reminder that the politics of baseless personal destruction has no place here. I think he's one of the best nominees I've seen in my 42 years in the United States Senate. And I apologize to him for the way he's been treated. Yes, this is an important position. Yes, and Democrats have a right to feel very worried and upset about a Republican getting this seat because they thought they had won the election. But that isn't the case. And our side has handled this, I think, with discretion, handling every problem that has come up. And frankly, I hope we can just move forward and get this done. It's the right thing to do. Judge Kavanaugh is a great judge. He'll make a great justice on the United States Supreme Court. And I intend to do everything I possibly can to make sure he gets there as quickly as we can.
Our friend, the
senior senator from Minnesota said about this confirmation process. She said, this is not normal. Well, I agree with her. Because if this is the new normal, woe be to the Senate and any nominee that would be subjected to the unacceptable character assassination that we've seen directed at this nominee in this case. If that's the new normal, I don't know who would want to serve. And frankly, I think
that's important. I'm going to stop it right there for a second. This is like the Salem witch trials. And if we allow this behavior to continue without checks on it, it will just steamroll into something more heavy for the people to deal with later. And with my previous comment about if there is nothing found and these are false allegations, excuse me, we have to take measures and actions against this sort of behavior so we don't have a Salem witch trial going on in our form of democracy. And we are a republic in a democratic form. That means we are a rule of law. And we vote for the outcome of that law. We vote our representatives in. And I don't like the fact that the Constitution was actually amended to have us vote the Senate in. I believe it should have stayed the way it was. We're seeing the Senate be filled with individuals that possibly shouldn't be there. But I'm digressing here. Let's get back to this.
People would be justified in losing any respect for the Senate and the way it conducts itself during the confirmation process. So more is at stake than just this nomination and the Supreme Court. The Senate itself is on trial here. A vote against Judge Kavanaugh tomorrow will be an endorsement of the mishandling of this confirmation process because of hiding relevant information that could have been examined on a bipartisan basis in a way that respected Dr. Ford's request for privacy and gotten to the bottom of this as we have attempted to do now with 20 million people watching on television. A vote against Judge Kavanaugh tomorrow will be a vote for abusing the confirmation process and a good person. And it will be a vote for the shameful intimidation tactics that have been employed as part of an orchestrated smear campaign. I agree that the FBI investigation, now they've talked to a total of 150 different people through the 7 background investigations that Judge Kavanaugh has been through since 1993. No corroboration, no confirmation of any of these outrageous accusations that have been made against him. Unfortunately, this could have all been avoided, most of the embarrassment to Dr. Ford and the public circus-like atmosphere, if the ranking member had just made the allegations known in the regular process and could have been investigated, as I said, in a way that would have protected her and her confidentiality. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I believe that we should, and we did, treat Dr. Ford the same way I would want my daughters or my wife or my mother treated under similar circumstances. But we have to remember that Judge Kavanaugh is entitled to a fair process too, and he has not been subjected to a fair process, anything but. So now's the time to quit all of these antics, these hijinks, this circus-like atmosphere, and we'll do that tomorrow morning when we vote, and Saturday when we vote to finally confirm this good man to this important position.
The process of reviewing the FBI reports that we received this morning has been exhaustive. It has been a collaborative process with my colleagues. It occurred in a classified environment because these are documents that we're not allowed to disclose to the public. But because we can review them in only one place, we reviewed them together, and we stopped and we talked about each point made to make sure that we understood the message from each interview and each report. Although that part of it, by operation of law, is not allowed to be public, I want to give you the assurance that we treated these documents just as we've treated each and every allegation with utmost seriousness, with a desire to do nothing more than search for the truth. And just as we've spent hours upon hours hearing testimony in open hearings before the public, we've also spent hours upon hours reviewing these documents in a classified environment. Allegations of sexual misconduct are serious, of sexual assault or of a most serious nature, and always have to be treated with utmost seriousness. They have been in this case. Again, this is someone who's been through 7 background investigations in the course of the last 3 decades, with over 150 people interviewed with regard to him. This is a man of outstanding character who has lived an exemplary life. He and his family have been subjected to a lot of questioning, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of humiliation in recent weeks. That has been a difficult part of this process for him. But in the process of doing that, he's proven his character and his willingness to be candid with the public, and even sharing facts that are at times uncomfortable. I'm convinced of this man's character, of his truthfulness, of his qualifications to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States. I wholeheartedly support his confirmation and look forward to voting for him in the coming hours.
Well, I agree with everything my colleagues have said. I also want to say that Dr. Ford, I firmly believe, experienced the traumatic event in her life. I just also believe that there's no evidence that we've seen through the FBI background checks, through the time that we've spent in the hearing, to substantiate that these claims are properly alleged and directed towards Judge Kavanaugh. Thousands of pages in that briefing room. Senator Lee and I were in that room together for an hour. We braked for an hour, then we were all back for 2 hours. At the desk is also some 1,500 pages that document the prior FBI background investigations. And in none of those was there any reference, and keep in mind, this goes back 23, 24 years. This would have only been 6 or 7 years after he was out of college. Certainly, if it was in recent memory, you would have seen some whip or some suggestion, and yet there was none. The last thing I'll leave you with is it appears as though since one of the tacks that some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have taken here is not working, they're not really able to substantiate the allegations. Now they've moved to this narrative of the way he behaved in the hearing last week was somehow putting to question his judicial temperament. In the 31 hours that he was before the Judiciary Committee, I saw Judge Kavanaugh. He was extremely patient with unfair questions being cut off, but he maintained his poise throughout those 32 hours with very few breaks. Last week, I saw Brett Kavanaugh. I wasn't judging him as a judge. I was judging him as a human being who's having his life destroyed before his very eyes, having his 13-year-old daughter heartbroken, and having his wife issue death threats. And I would defy anyone in this room, if they had gone through that same experience, if you wouldn't have had those same emotions. And yet, over the course of that testimony, nearly 2 hours, I think he composed himself and did a good job in answering the questions and defending his good name.
We're ready for questions. Direct them to whoever you want to.
Chairman Grassley, can you explain to us how you came up with your list of who should be interviewed by the FBI?
I think I'll let you do that because you were at the same meeting I was at.
We did not come up with a list of people who the FBI should interview. The FBI was requested to conduct an investigation into any and all credible current accusations of sexual misconduct by Judge Kavanaugh. And the FBI made the decision.
Okay.
Oh, we're going to do a little commercial here.
From there as to who to interview.
So then as a follow-up to that, why not have the FBI interview people in whom Christine Blasey Ford confided in over the years? Aren't those kinds of conversations usually key to sexual assault investigations?
They did, and I think I answered your question. Our request was to the White House. The White House then made the request of the FBI to conduct a supplemental investigation into current credible accusations of sexual misconduct. They did that.
Senator, to be clear, that we did not give them a list of people and only these people they can speak with. We went back to have them go back and to those who issued statements, speak with them. But a part of the protocol when you do a criminal background investigation, is there anyone else I should speak to? And in fact, when they went through that, they identified some others who hadn't put forward statements before. And we saw that in the record this morning.
Senator, both attorneys have said specifically that there's 8 additional witnesses interviewed. And Deborah Ramirez's attorney said there could be 20. There should be an additional 20 witnesses interviewed, potentially people who could corroborate these accounts. Why not green light the FBI, tell the White House to green light the FBI to interview these additional witnesses?
The FBI has gotten all the permission they need in order to interview whoever they think is necessary. There has been no one to corroborate any of the allegations made by Dr. Ford or by Ms. Ramirez. And the FBI has reported that back to us. They have followed additional leads. But the whole purpose of this is delay. This is not a search for the truth anymore. It became clear early on when this allegation by Dr. Ford was hidden from the committee and handled in such an extraordinary way against her wishes and without her consent. This is a search and destroy mission. This is not a search for the truth. We've done everything we can to treat both Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford fairly and treat all allegations made seriously. It's been exhaustively studied by the FBI as well as Judiciary Committee staff. There really isn't anything else.
But Senator.
And that's important. After all these years, why was there never a criminal complaint filed before this? That right there weighs heavy with me. You know, so we have to think about what we're dealing with here. And that is the Senate Republican leaders' press conference on the matter. And I tend to lean in the same direction. I do not vote Democrat. I do not vote Republican. I am an independent thinker. I think for myself, and that's how I vote. I study my issues. I study what I am looking at before I make a decision. A false allegation on somebody, especially this type of allegation, is not fun. It is very life-destroying. These allegations can live with people for years and years. And if we have people making false allegations and they are found to be false allegations, we need to hold those people accountable for character assassination. You know, it's not right to slander people and to delay a confirmation. And there's disturbing things about this whole process. And the Democrats have been really to put divisions between. I found it interesting that John Kerry was going ahead of Michael Pompeo telling them to wait out this administration. This is getting ridiculous. To me, I believe that's unprecedented. I don't remember ever hearing about that ever before. It's always when an administration leaves office, they leave the role of statesmanship. That's the next administration's job, to take over the State Department. So, yeah, there are these things that are happening that are not very good for our democracy. We are a republic. We have good government standards. Our Constitution is set up in a way that protects our freedoms, our liberties, our way of life. And if we are unwilling to dive in and study and understand how our government works, civics matters. It's one of the most important things in your life. And I feel that religion is the second. And people always want to start divides. They want to start fights. They want to argue instead of dive in and understand the other side, understand people's concerns, understand people's passions, understand people's ambitions, because we all live here together, and we should not cut people down verbally, physically, mentally. You see, we need to stop all this division, and we really need to start having some civil debates, some good dialogue on hard issues. And I'm telling you, we are at the point in time in this nation that we are closest to a civil war point than I have ever seen. And I've seen quite a few of these things happen over the time, and the civil disruption just keeps on growing. We need to get a handle on what our republic really is, and we need law. We don't need big anarchists and divisions. We need people to understand each other and work for a more perfect union. We are America, and we should be the beacon and the hope of the world. People are running from America now instead of running to America. That's not a good thing. So, I'm going to try to find the Democratic arguments on this side and look at those. And if I can find a suitable audio or video, we'll make another one on this issue. However, I want to thank you. I want to thank Dialogue. That's getdialogue.am. It's a good platform. You can bring your friends, your family, your coworkers, or your opposition in and have open dialogue, debate, and get your voice heard. It's important. We're all important. We all matter, and we all have a special gift. Start talking to people. It's hard. I'm trying to get to that point myself. The trust factor of people is gone. The willingness to open up to people is gone, because everybody wants to say, oh, you talk funny. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you'll never know each other until you can sit down and understand each other. Start talking. Listen, people. Listen to people. Listen to people. Listen. Ed, Free Circle, out.